I woke up to the gentle caress of the first rays of sunlight on my face. I opened my eyes slowly, feeling the peace of the morning fill my room. I looked to the side and saw Pedro still sleeping, as calm as a child. Gently, I brushed a strand of hair away from his face and whispered in his ear, "My love, it's time." A muffled grunt was my answer, a sign that he was already waking up. Smiled. I got out of bed and went to make coffee. I turned on the coffee maker, and while I waited for the coffee to be ready, I went to the bedroom to wake Pedro. He mumbled something and turned to the other side, but soon got up and went to take a shower. I prepared the coffee and set it on the table. I heard his hurried footsteps coming down the stairs. "Good morning, love," he said, grabbing a cup of coffee. "I'm off now." I kissed his cheek and watched him walk out the door. Finally, the house was all mine. I walked slowly down the hallway, feeling freedom take over me. I entered the room and, with a sigh, let my nightgown fall to the floor. The nudity gave me a sense of lightness I hadn't felt in a long time. I opened the window, allowing the morning breeze to caress my skin. I began to make the bed, carefully folding the sheets. I opened the drawer and grabbed whatever was there: an old pair of underwear, a faded top, and a worn-out jean shorts. Before getting dressed, I looked into the back of the closet, thought about taking something from there, but changed my mind, closing the doors. I put on my lingerie, my worn-out denim shorts, and the top I loved so much. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, trying to ignore the imperfections that insisted on showing, even after so many diets. My name is Aline, and at 35, my body still kept its curves, now fuller, giving me a hotib style. Voluminous breasts, big butt and thick thighs. I adjusted my wavy blonde hair, running my fingers through it to tame the volume. I smiled at my reflection, feeling a slight pang of guilt for wearing such a short outfit to do the cleaning. The shorts were short enough to give me a sense of freedom, but they also made me feel a bit vulnerable. I only wore this outfit when I was sure Pedro wouldn't be home. With the crisis, my world collapsed. An architect by training, I saw my promising career abruptly interrupted. Losing my job was a hard blow, and the difficulty in finding new opportunities left me discouraged. With the housekeeper let go, the responsibility of taking care of the home fell entirely on my shoulders. At first, the idea of being a full-time homemaker felt like a step backward, an end to my professional aspirations. Over time, however, I got used to it. Pedro was a competent and dedicated engineer. He ensured our comfort and never let us lack anything. While he busied himself with projects and tight deadlines, I focused on the home, creating a cozy environment for both of us. I confess that sometimes I felt a bit envious of his busy life. The domestic routine, as peaceful as it was, could be a little monotonous. Sometimes boredom came knocking at the door. Finished with the cleaning, the gleaming house returned to me a sense of accomplishment. But then what? The afternoons stretched on, long and empty. I tried to fill that emptiness with television, but the shows all seemed the same. I missed something more, an activity that would give me pleasure, that would make me feel alive. The TV was on in the background, a white noise to fill the silence of the house. But it was on my phone that I found true distraction. Hours passed as I swiped my finger across the screen, consuming content non-stop. Sometimes the images excited me and I found myself thinking about that box stored in the closet. Curiosity stirred me, but laziness kept me from getting up. I looked at the stairs, but each time I gave up, preferring to stay there, immersed in my virtual world. I wonder if many women are going through this situation. The clock seemed to have stopped. Each tick echoed in the silence of the house, amplifying the boredom that consumed me. After all, Pedro's arrival was always a relief. I got up and went to the kitchen to finish dinner, already in a dress and out of my housework clothes. He came in as tired as ever, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. After dinner, we settled on the couch to watch television. I pretended to be interested in the show. When night fell, we headed to the bedroom, ready for another routine night. I wrapped myself in my silk robe and stepped out of the bathroom. Pedro was lying on the bed, waiting for me with a mischievous smile on his lips. I crawled across the bed and reached him, still half asleep. I leaned over and gently traced his features with my hand. As I did, I could feel his breath become more steady and deep. Responding to my touch, he seemed to relax further, and I continued exploring, savoring the connection. Slowly, I moved closer, positioning myself carefully as we aligned. Every moment felt more intense, and the atmosphere between us grew heavier with anticipation. When I reached for the fabric of my nightgown, he gently stopped me and we paused. I could feel Pedro's presence close to me, warm and comforting. His arms held me tightly and we moved in sync, the connection between us growing stronger. I could sense his breath becoming quicker, the moment building. In a soft voice, I whispered in his ear, "You've got this." His embrace tightened, and I could feel his excitement as everything came together in that moment. Our lips met in a kiss. Pedro turned to the side and fell asleep, but I couldn't. We had been sharing the bed for years, and I knew exactly how he slept. Deeply, like a rock. I got up quietly and walked over to the wardrobe. My fingers fumbled over the familiar wood until they found the box. It was the same one I had examined earlier, the one that held a secret I had been carrying for so long. From it, I took a toy with a suction cup at the base, completely black. The color was so dark that it was almost impossible to notice, just by looking at it, the rough texture full of bulging veins. I descended the stairs and headed to the living room. I threw the nightgown on the couch and went straight to the curtains. I opened them wide, allowing the moonlight to flood the room. The house was safe, protected by the tall walls and lush trees, which kept any prying eyes at bay. I positioned the object carefully on the floor, aligning it just right, and then lowered myself. A small smile spread across my face as I took in the quiet, peaceful atmosphere of the night. The sensation was indescribable. Kneeling on the cold floor, I closed my eyes and tuned into the sensations around me. With each movement, a new layer of comfort unfolded. I took deep breaths, feeling warmth spread through my body. The quiet night embraced me, and I became fully immersed in the moment. Time seemed to slip away, and eventually, I felt a sense of fulfillment under the moonlight. So I got up and went to the bathroom. I cleaned everything carefully and put it back in its place. Back in the bedroom, I lay down on the bed, exhausted but happy. I felt conflicted. I loved Pedro, but I also loved the person I was. The person with dreams and desires who wanted to feel truly alive. Every time I sought personal comfort, I felt a deep sense of guilt. But at the same time, there was a sense of freedom I had never known before. I didn't want to hurt him. He had always been so kind, so understanding. But there was a lingering sense of emptiness when we were together, a feeling that something was missing, and it left me feeling sad and confused. I began seeking moments of relief when he wasn't around, but soon I realized that it wasn't enough. The yearning I felt throughout the day grew stronger, and I started questioning whether I was drifting apart from him. The thought terrified me. I needed something to fill the space within me, something to occupy my mind and ease the emptiness that seemed to settle in my heart during the afternoons. The next morning, while making coffee, I decided to tell Pedro about my decision to start going to the gym. The idea excited me, but I knew he might not like it much. And he didn't. His face twisted into an expression of disapproval. "The gym? Why?" he asked, with a tone that made me feel insecure. To take care of myself to feel better, I replied, trying to sound confident. But he wasn't convinced. I think you're already beautiful the way you are, he said, and then added, with a hint of resentment, and I don't like the idea of you being hit on by other men. I felt my heart tighten. I tried to explain that I just wanted to take care of my health and have an activity to fill my days, but he seemed more and more irritated. Pedro insisted that I didn't appreciate the life he provided for me, that I thought everything was too late. How could I explain that the lack of excitement and the suffocating routine made me feel empty inside? His arguments echoed in my ears, but no words came out of my mouth. My heart was hardened by his insistence on not understanding me. How about hiring a personal trainer? That way you can do the exercises right here at home. I'll give you all the money you need to buy clothes and equipment, he said. I kissed Pedro and watched him leave the house, happy as can be. I took a deep breath and started organizing the house. While I was tidying up the kitchen, I began thinking about how I could improve my quality of life. I decided it was time to take better care of myself, so I started looking for a personal trainer. I wanted to feel more active and healthy. I found the contact information for Andrea, a highly recommended professional, and scheduled my first class. When Andrea walked into the house, my eyes were fixed on her. Her body was sculptural, defined in every curve. She wore a top and leggings that accentuated her black beauty. Her voluminous curly hair was tied in an elegant bun, contrasting with her lighter skin. I couldn't help but admire her great shape. I felt a pang of envy but also hope. Would I ever be able to have a body like that? I could hardly believe my eyes. The personal trainer was simply amazing. She had a toned body, with a sculpted abdomen and muscular arms. Her hips and legs were strong and shapely, the perfect image of health and vitality. Her face was striking, with a flat nose and dark eyes that sparkled with joy. Andrea radiated contagious energy, and from the very first moment, she made me feel certain that with her, I could achieve my goals. Andrea gave me a long list of things to buy. Elastic bands, weights, new clothes, and even supplements. I confess that I got excited but also a bit frustrated. I explained to Andrea that I needed to wait for Pedro to buy everything before I could start exercising, but she seemed surprised. I know he wants to please me, but sometimes he's so slow. And to top it off, he vetoed the shorter shorts, even though I'm only going to be training at home. Since the first day, we felt a special connection. After workouts, we would take the time to talk about everything. That's how Andrea got to know my story. She said it reminded her of the stories of women from her mother's time, who dreamed of getting married and being housewives. For her, it was a surprise to see that this reality still existed. It was as if we were living in different times, but at the same time so close. Getting to know Andrea's reality made me remember how lucky I was. Living in a rented apartment without a stable job, getting by with odd jobs and the few clients I managed to get. At that moment, all the nostalgia I felt for my old job simply evaporated. Andrea's real life was much harder than I had imagined. Despite being hardworking, Andrea struggled with organization. The work dynamics, full of surprises and unpredictability, left no room for a regular routine. When the owner of the apartment where she lived asked for the property back, she couldn't get organized to find another place and move. One day while she was training, she seemed absent-minded, and when asked about the issue, she started crying. I promised to help her, but I needed Pedro's approval. Pedro arrived home, and I took the opportunity to talk to him. I need to tell you something important, I began. Andrea needs a place to stay, and I was thinking about asking her to stay here with us for a while. I saw the discomfort on his face, but I continued. I know it's a big request, but she's going through a tough time and has nowhere to go. I know you have a good heart and won't deny me this favor. I insisted, knowing that Andrea was counting on me and I couldn't let her down. Pedro looked at me with a mix of exhaustion and irritation, and with a drawn-out voice, allowed her to stay. But he put one condition: she would have to sleep in the maid's room. A knot formed in my throat. I didn't understand why she had to stay in that tiny, damp room when there were other empty rooms in the house. I wanted to question him, but the fatigue in his eyes stopped me. Her few belongings piled up in the garage, a constant reminder of the sudden change. The maid's room became her new refuge, small and lonely. She was deeply grateful for our generosity, but the truth was she felt like a fish out of water. To avoid any awkwardness, she kept to herself, almost invisible. She woke up before dawn and left the house quietly, only returning when I was training. She had dinner in her room, no matter how much I invited her. Despite the struggles, I achieved my goal. The days were less dull, and I no longer had lustful thoughts during the afternoons. The same could not be said for the nights. The new exercise routine did not quell my desire. It only made it more intense. My wish was to grab Pedro as soon as he got home, but I held back because Andrea was in the maid's room. I controlled myself throughout dinner, calling him to the bedroom right afterward. Pedro agreed, but not in the way I had hoped. Very tired, he just wanted to sleep. The exhaustion was so great that the man ignored all my advances, leaving me frustrated. With my husband falling asleep just a few minutes after lying down, I made sure to open the wardrobe and quietly grab the box. I looked at the bed, saw my husband unconscious, and left the room with steady steps, going down to the living room. I thought about taking off my nightgown, but then I looked toward the kitchen doorway and imagined I could be caught by Andrea at any moment. More than arousal, I felt a pang of anger from my frustration with Pedro, and I didn't want to think too much about a solution. I opened the door and went outside. With the high walls ensuring privacy, I felt at ease and began preparing the meal. Leaning against the counter, I opened the box and brought it close, focusing on getting everything ready for dinner with Pedro. As I worked, all I could think about was how much I was looking forward to a relaxing evening. I could finally find some peace with my eyes closed, reflecting on how I had hoped to be treated. My hands moved gently, focusing on the sensation, as I embraced the moment with calmness and control. Despite its size, I was able to handle it with ease. I slowly moved it down my body, feeling the smoothness of the motion. A playful smile spread across my face as I continued. As I began the movement, I whispered to myself, "This is it." Leaning against the wall, my other hand traced patterns on my skin. I let out soft breaths, my eyes closing as I focused. Picking up the pace, a satisfied smile crossed my face as I felt myself becoming more energized. With a wider smile on my face, I let out a contented sigh, though it wasn't overly loud. Still feeling the moment, I slowly moved along the wall until I sat down on the floor, allowing myself to fully appreciate the sensation. I gently ran my hands over my body as my breathing returned to a calm, steady rhythm. There was a satisfied smile on my face that faded when I looked to the side and saw Andrea watching from the corner of the wall. Frustrated with my tired husband, I decided to do a little crazy thing outside the house. Since the garage was open, it felt like being outdoors. It was an amazing moment just for myself. I just didn't expect to be watched by my personal trainer, who had started staying at my house a few days earlier. The shock and embarrassment were so intense that I couldn't say anything. I just took off the object and went to look for my nightgown. I ran inside, ignoring Andrea's attempts to apologize. I struggled to sleep that night. Subscribe if you liked it and want to know more about my story, and leave your comment at the end of the video. telling what you would do if you were caught like this.